Hi Photo 2. Today I wanted to talk to you about advanced photo composition. So if you remember from Photo 1, here are a few of the composition strategies that you should already know, such as rule of thirds, leading lines, and there's different pictures of different examples here. Unity and variety, having a balance of those two concepts, breaking the edge, meaning getting close, contrast, having some kind of, opposites within your scene, whether light and dark, red and green, big and small. Using framing to keep your viewer's eye on a focal point, emphasis, kind of a combination of all of these different concepts in order to draw your viewer's eye to the focal point, and repetition to create pattern and interest. So today I wanted to just go over some deeper concepts that you might find useful when taking photographs for any of your projects this semester. So the first one that you might have heard about before is called the golden ratio. So this is also known as the Fibonacci spiral, a golden mean, divine proportion. These are all names for the same concept, that if you take a line and divide it into two pieces, one piece being 1.6 times the other, this is equivalent to, say, the proportion of your forearm to your bicep. So your forearm is 1.6 times the length of your bicep. That's why it's called the divine proportion, because you find this proportion in all aspects of nature, whether it's the human body, flowers, animals. Most things in nature follow this ratio. So in photography, it's a great idea to capture this spiral or mean or ratio in whatever way you can. So there's an example at the top. Up here, I'm probably going to mess up my Prezi by going to it. But you can see that this can be captured in shapes like triangles, spirals, cubes, just anything where you take that line segment and you divide it in half, and then one is bigger than the other, basically, in a regular fashion, such as in that spiral. Those boxes are slowly getting smaller, and in relation to one another, the triangles one is kind of fun if you divide your scene along the diagonal, and then you find like a right triangle in either of those two corners. Try and place things along that, and it will be a pleasing composition. Okay, next, when thinking about contrast, the upper level term I want you to use is juxtaposition. So this is a fancy vocabulary word. It's also like a map test word or a ACT word. So this means placing two non-like things together in order to show the contrast between them. So these are like beyond opposites. They could be sort of just irreverent things that absolutely have nothing to do with each other, like a human and a flower. Those two things are very different. So when putting them together in one scene, they create interest. So it kind of goes beyond the idea of opposites. It's more about things that have nothing to do with each other. They're not related at all. Color is a great thing to play with in your photographs, whether that be color schemes from the simplest monochromatic scheme where all the colors are in harmony or similar, to split complementary, which is a little bit more advanced. You might want to spend some time getting to know each of these terms up here. These beyond photo composition, these color schemes can play a role in any art form that you go into, whether it's sculpture or painting or drawing or color pencils, and photography is no exception to that. Your photos can really be elevated by having a sense of organization in the colors that you choose. So if you want to pre-plan color schemes, you can go to either of these two websites above. Color.adobe.com is really fun because you can actually upload a photograph and it will dissect what colors are within that color scheme, such as the image on the right. All right, lines. Just like leading lines from our Photo 1, the line of sight is an important concept to know. And now that you're in Photo 2, you want to think about where are your subjects looking within the frame, and how does that lead your viewer's eye. So we tend to want to look where other humans are looking to see what the focus of interest is. And when doing this, you might want to think about having your subject look into the most space in the photograph. So that means, like in this example up here, the woman is placed almost on one of those third lines, and she's looking into the part of the scene that has the most space. So that will allow your viewer to feel, balanced, like they have breathing room is kind of what I call it, like there's more room on the side that they're looking. You can also use the left to right rule. So the concept that we as humans read from left to right also applies to visual imagery. So we read our images from left to right too. So you may as well have your line of sight, such as in this guitar player at the bottom, facing from the left to the right so that it's in flow with how we naturally read images and words. All right, shapes are important to incorporate. So geometry is anything that is a man-made type shape, but you can also find geometry in natural elements, whether that be connecting the dots to create a triangle like the image on the right. Again, using the golden mean, using triangles and shapes to divide up your picture plane in interesting and unusual ways. So golden triangles and shapes are great to use. Also, when thinking about balance, how can you incorporate symmetry? So we talked a lot about the rule of thirds in photo 1, which is creating asymmetry, which is still a form of balance, but it's more irregular balance. It's, unusual. It doesn't have a perfect mirror image from one side to the other. And symmetry doesn't have to be a mirror image. It could just be where you balance your space by having either half of your picture holding the same visual weight. So that has to do with the size and placement of things being in a formal or a regular fashion. Negative space, thinking about what you're going to do with this space in your photographs now in photo 2. Think about zooming out and getting really far away from your subject in order to let the simplicity of that negative space help to tell your story, help to create visual interest on the one part that is emphasized. And how are you going to maybe even layer your photograph within that space in the background? So this could be by including things in the foreground to really offset that background space. But really thinking about where the visual weight in your image is, and think about placing that on the negative space to see what it does for the balance in the rest of your frame. Contrasting colors, this kind of goes along with the color scheme idea, but using those complementary colors and being very purposeful about maybe even memorizing what complementary pairs you have to choose from. So if you see an opportunity where, oh, this girl is wearing orange and there's a blue sky behind her, that would make a great photograph because that is a complementary color scheme, and we know that that creates harmony and balance and pleasure in the human eye. So like violet and yellow, red and green, orange and blue, memorizing these complementary pairs will really prepare you for finding them out and about in the real world. All right, so the rule of space is kind of one we already sort of talked about with the line of sight. So your object, if you have a moving object, whether that's a running horse, a skateboarder, or car, panning with the car, whatever it is that's moving, you want that movement to be going into the dominant area in your photograph. So the most space in your photograph should be what that object is moving into. So if you capture a panning image of a car and the front bumper is right on the rightmost edge of that scene, you've pretty much missed the scene, right? Or you're capturing a baseball player and the baseball is almost off the edge. You want that moving object to be moving into your scene, not out of it, because that keeps your viewer's eye within the space. Also using the rule of odds. So this is kind of like the rule of thirds, except it has to do with including an odd number of things within your frame. This could be 3, 5, 7, 9. The idea is that this rule, the odd number, creates visual interest. It also creates this sense that we're looking at something in a natural fashion, almost like how horizontal pictures almost more mimic how we see the world. We really don't look up and down very often as much as we pan left to right. So horizontal images feel more natural, and odd numbers feel more natural because if it's an even number, we tend to want to just in our mind group those into pairs, see them as a shape, whereas odd numbers tend to create more like triangles, which are asymmetrical and tend to be more natural and more pleasing to the eye. Fill the frame. That idea is you want to fill your image with the subject, and this kind of relates to breaking the edge. So you're getting close. You're really not leaving a lot of negative space to add to the story. The story is filling your frame. So in this example, the colors on her face are all that really matter. It doesn't really matter what's going on in the background, so you may as well fill the frame with that scene. All right, using the rule of angles is similar to the Fibonacci rule, that golden mean. So using angles and diagonals, dynamic diagonals is what we call them when they're at an angle and they're not necessarily going right to the corners of your frame, maybe offset your camera a little bit, use one of those creative tilts, creative angles, so that the angles in your scene feel a little bit more natural, as if we were actually looking at the scene without having like the four walls, without having the camera in the way. So the idea of removing the intermediary, removing the camera from the scene as if we're really looking at it. And then diagonals, again, are just a great way to incorporate interest into your scenes, and try and avoid just having all of your lines go right to a corner, because, again, that's boring, and that it doesn't really mimic how we actually see. Okay, going off of that framing idea from photo 1, if you can find a frame within a frame, that's even more pleasing. And that's one of those higher level composition strategies, because you're almost using, with any of these pictures, you want to think about using at least 3 of these strategies. So are you using contrast? Okay, great. What else are you using? Maybe there's rule of thirds going on, and there's framing. So instead of just using one composition strategy, now that you're in photo 2, you should be good enough to see opportunities in the real world for combining multiple of these strategies. And it could be anything we went over in photo 1, or definitely something from these new ideas. So frame within a frame is one of those upper level strategies, and then just a couple of extra little things, and you might even go and find some more. Now that I've piqued your interest, you can go do your own research and find even more photo composition strategies that can bring your work to the next level. Because in this class, we're really just using cell phones this semester, with it being all online. So you really have to push yourself to capture compositions, because exposure is taken care of for you, right? Whenever you're using your auto camera on your phone, you really don't have to do a lot of thinking about the technical side of things. So the art form really comes in what you place within those 4 walls of your viewfinder. So your composition is going to really be what elevates your picture to that next level. And I just wanted to leave you with a quote by Imogen Cunningham, a great photographer who focused a lot on her compositions and getting close to subjects like flowers and still life objects. Which of my photographs is my favorite? The one I'm going to take tomorrow. So hopefully you can take some interesting photos tomorrow and beyond, using some of these great strategies for advanced photo composition. Thanks, guys.